Hello, puppies and kittens. Welcome to another episode in a long time. We haven't done one on why do you believe, but Andre said that he wanted to advocate for his brand of Christianity, and also he said separately for something called Christian socialism, which I think we're all really tired of Christian nationalism. So let's hear about something else. Andre.
Well, hello. Thank you for having me, Aaron. Uh, One quick order of business. I don't have a script, but I have some notes on a doc. Would you be okay if I look at that sometimes?
Absolutely, keep
Okay.
bullet points where you can see them.
I've watched so many of your episodes and stuff to where if anyone can convince you, it's got to be me. I'm kidding, kind of. But, anyways, so should I just start off by saying what Christian socialism is, or should I start off by saying my brand of Christianity? How do you want me to jump into this?
Well, I think definitions are a good way to start.
Okay. So Christianity, I am technically a Catholic, though not. I'm leaning towards leaving the Catholic Church. I haven't been to Mass in a very long time. Personally, because of spiritual reasons, I have beliefs that are outside of it, but more importantly, scandals, crimes, things like that. However, I would consider myself a Christian because I worship Jesus Christ, sometimes better than other times, but I do the best I can. And that's how I would define my Christianity. I don't take everything in the Bible literally, nor do I believe everything in the Bible was written by God, which I know might be a little frustrating for you because you're debating or talking to a Christian, and now you're going to have me. I'm not going to hand wave away bad things you might mention about the Bible, but I very well may say, yeah, I just don't accept that. If
Okay.
um, I have a good foundation for that, I would believe, based on Christian ethics, which takes me into what Christian socialism is. Is that a good definition of the Christianity?
But it doesn't actually define Christianity other than that you worship Jesus, which I guess for me is perfectly fine. But there's going to be a whole lot of people who say no, Jehovah's Witnesses are not Christian, and Mormons are not Christian, and Catholics are not Christian.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, do you want me to take a swing at that? Because I would simply say that, I mean, I can only really speak for myself. And within the Catholic Church, as you might know, and within Protestant churches, they also throw mud at each other too. And there's, well, you're not this. I would say the definition is worshiping Jesus Christ, full stop.
Okay.
Um, Now, that being,
Again, as an atheist, that seems perfectly fair that's how Christianity would be defined. I'm
yeah,
good with it.
okay. And thank you for that. So, getting into Christian socialism, I want to start off by saying you mentioned Christian nationalism. I am not a Christian nationalist. I saw someone in the chat wonder if I would be closer to a national Bolshevik. Definitely not. Or I don't know if you know what that is, but it's not good. And I would consider myself a libertarian socialist. Now, there's different strains within that. Let's forget Christianity for a split second and just talk about libertarian socialism. Um, so there's two types of it. There's types that believe there should be a state, and then there's the anarchist types, right? Who say there should be no state at all. Now, going back to Christianity, I've liked both libertarian Christian socialism with a state, and I've liked Catholic anarchy, which might sound like an oxymoron, and that's a whole other subject we could get into. But you know how anarchists, they argue too, leaderships with recallable delegates, no this, that, no border, the different things. But for the sake of this conversation, I wanted to say, let's say you and I woke up tomorrow in the United States, and let's say it was either Christian anarchy or with the state, much more likely with the state. I want to talk about the things that I would want in both of those cases to focus on a more realistic thing, if that's okay with you.
Okay.
So jumping into that, Christian socialism is basically socialism with Christian ethics. And pulling up my notes to make sure I get it right, I've explained the Catholic anarchism and Christian anarchism versus the kind with the state. Basically, socialism can simply be defined as all of the means of production being owned socially. Now, there's market socialists, different things like that. I personally don't like markets because I believe markets lead to a lot of inequality, and
Is
I
this
would
why you
prefer
put
to.
in the clarifier that it must be all of the means of production? So you're not allowing for like mixed economies like Denmark or Norway.
Right, right. I do not consider social democracy socialism. That being said, I'm not. I'm not a square who's going to be mad at people who call themselves that. If you want to call yourself a socialist and are a social democrat, I don't mean to like take a jab at those people, but I wouldn't consider it socialism simply because socialism is supposed to be the collective ownership of all the means of production. So if you have a large firm or business like Google or even a small one, I would like to see on socialism it controlled by the workers, producing and partially controlled by society too, because it's going to produce goods for society, right? So rather than for commodity production, meaning if I were to make software, that's not a great example because a better example would be like a can of water or a bottle of water, making them for use rather than making an over amount of them to sell on the market. However, Christian socialism can include markets, and I would say that if we were to have my ideal society in the short term at least, I would be fine with markets if it turns out not having them would cause everything to go haywire. But it would have to be all socially owned. So that's the socialism I'm advocating for. I don't know if you want to jump in or if you want me to get into the Christian part.
Well, I took one test recently that said that I may have moved far enough to the left that I could classify as a socialist, whereas every other political test I've ever taken to this point had me one increment further to the right where I was still a social democrat.
Yeah.
So yeah, asking why do you believe in socialism isn't the big thing for me. Now,
Okay.
why you would want it to be all socialism and not include the market economy, because I think it's best when there's a mix. Okay, but that didn't really matter to me. It is the Christian part that is going to be the big problem.
Okay, we'll jump into that right now. Can I just throw in a little caveat?
Sure.
That little caveat being, I would prefer not having markets, but if we need to have them, as long as it's socially owned, I would be fine with it. But it's the private ownership of social democracy, along with other capitalist logic, if you will, that I'm not a fan of. But we can get back to that if you want. But let's address the Christianity. Do you want me to start talking about the Christian ethics, or do you want to ask something?
Well, I don't know that the Christian ethics, whatever ethics you're going to cite, I don't know that they matter. Because
what do you mean?
Because you have a belief. So you have a belief that things happened. You have a belief in the existence of certain things.
Yes.
Doesn't matter what the ethics of the belief system are. I'm a Satanist. We have fine ethics. Humanists have fine ethics.
The ethics do matter.
But they don't. But we're not making statements about the existence of being. Satanists don't believe in an actual devil.
I've watched you enough to know that.
Right. So if they did, then having the ethics would not. Oh well, you have good ethics. There must be a Satan. So no, it doesn't. You have fine ethics. Okay, that means Jesus. No, it doesn't.
Let me up the ante a little bit then, because I see what you're saying. You're right. Good ethics in itself wouldn't make for anything to be true. I would add that the reason I am also a Christian socialist is I don't believe without enough people believing in Jesus that we could ever have the society that I want. And before anyone jumps in, I would be opposed to forcing it onto anybody as anyone. Forced conversion is not okay. You have a right to be an atheist or a Satanist or what have you. But I believe that in my opinion, that without society having the Christian ethics that I am going to lay out, that we wouldn't be able to achieve socialism. Similarly to how Marx thought he couldn't have his strand of socialism without dialectical materialism and all that.
Okay, I'm trying to let you establish an argument before I jump in. So.
Okay. So why don't I get into it? Christian ethics can be defined, I would say, by these 4 bullet points. Love your neighbor as yourself. We are created in the image of God. Stewardship over the earth, and community over individualism. I took those bullet points.
You got one of those that is directly in contrast to mainstream Christianity.
That being
second from the last.
Oh, the whatchamacallit, the we are created in the image of God. Oh no, the stewardship over the earth. The earth. Yeah, but here's the thing. These mainstream Christians think Donald Trump's a Christian, don't they? And they think, they like, and I get
yes, mainstream Christians think a lot of stupid things, Mainstream
Sure.
Christians are all about forced conformity. Mainstream Christians are not for stewardship of the earth. They say that to
Right.
roast and smoke everything, exploit everything, harvest everything you can get your hands on. It's like Ann Coulter put it. The gas guzzling SUV with the wet bars, the Christian way.
I know that
Right.
from your
So
channel, actually. Yeah.
they don't believe in environmentalism at all. Have as many babies as possible to bring more souls unto the Lord. It doesn't matter if we run out of food. It doesn't matter if we run out of resources, because Jesus will come and save us from ourselves.
Can I challenge you on that for a second? In
I
a couple
doubt
of
it,
ways?
but go ahead.
I'll do my best. Let's say that the world went mad and they made me emperor of the world, which I don't want. And I started teaching the theory of evolution wrong. And I started saying Lysenkoism, which I also learned about on your channel. I've watched too much of your channel. No, my friends think I'm so crazy for it because I'm not an atheist. But however, let's say I started teaching the theory of evolution and saying Lysenkoism, right? And then people say, well, I mean, clearly mainstream people who accept the theory of evolution believe in Lysenkoism. Therefore, let's throw away the theory of evolution. Would you be for that?
That made no sense, and it has no relation to what we're talking about either.
But you're saying that mainstream Christians do X,
Right.
therefore it represents what Christianity is.
It's not just that one, because you've got the other one where we're made in the image of God. So we have asserting baseless speculation, unsupported assertions as fact.
Yeah.
We call that lying.
I know that you would call that lying, but that being said, I would counter that by saying I have my reasons for why I believe that, and I can share them, and I will in a second.
Okay.
However, I would not raise my hand and say it's a guarantee. I wouldn't raise my hand and say I am certainly right. I could be wrong, but that's where it has taken me, and I would not call that a lie.
One of the arguments that I often hear from believers, from theologians and so forth, one of the arguments that they try to use is the contingency and the necessary being, right? So in order to be Christian, in order to believe in Jesus, you first have to believe that there's a God.
Yes.
And the specifics of Christianity require also that you believe that we have, and this is the modern Christianity. This is not like Jesus's Christianity, because that's very different.
Okay.
But you have this notion that we have a soul, that the soul will continue on, whether the wages of sin are death, but we're still not going to die somehow because contradictions.
I do believe that.
What's that?
I do believe that. Continue. Sorry.
You believe that we will die or that we will continue?
I believe the soul will continue.
Okay. Well, again, it's a contradiction, because the wages of sin is death. So if you sin, then you die in your sin. But if you will only get eternal life if you believe in Jesus. But then they change the rules. So we still get eternal life, whether we want it or not, whether we believe in Jesus or not. And now the soul will go on to this hell concept, which is so utterly binary and ridiculous that it contradicts God. It's inconsistent with God. If there was an actual God, God would not allow there to be a hell, a vindictive, maniacal torture for eternity over a finite crime, which isn't even a crime at all. It's for not believing impossible nonsense for no good reason. You were lied to by people who were obvious liars, who couldn't back up their argument. You didn't believe them, no fault of your own, but we're going to torture you forever, mercilessly, savagely, because you didn't buy the bullshit of the idiots.
I've heard you say that before, and I want to say I largely do agree with you, surprisingly or not. And I'm afraid to say this because you might completely throw me away as a Christian, but I don't really believe in hell.
I was a Christian who didn't believe in hell.
I just can't. It doesn't. I know you're going to say, or people are going to say, oh, but you're cherry picking. But I believe God wrote morality on our hearts, okay? Hearts being not literal your heart. And the thing is, if I could not imagine a hell to send people to torture them forever and ever and ever and be a good God. I used to believe in hell. I should say I was never a Christian nationalist, but I used to believe, I used to be closer to a right-wing Christian, and I knew some people who were. And so I know what it's like. And your channel actually it wasn't the largest part, but it was a significant part of me kind of backing out of that because I saw some of your lecture conferences on hell actually, and I've seen some of your debates before, and it really got me thinking and praying and whatnot. And I wouldn't want to worship a God who sends someone to hell.
Thank you very much. I was reborn at 19,
Hmm.
but I gave up believing in hell at 13.
Really, at 13?
Yeah, so it was just too ridiculous a concept. I mean, it is so obviously a tool of the apologist, right? When they offer heaven and they say streets made of gold and all this
Hmm.
shit, and you'll be there forever kissing God's ass for all eternity, and you can never die and you'll never escape. They realized, well, this doesn't really have the appeal that we thought it would. There's a whole lot of people that would say, you know what, I pass. Can I just
Yeah.
die? That would be better than going to heaven. And I'm one of those. Absolutely. I prayed to God when I was 12. Just let me die.
Well, let me tell you this, if you don't mind, about my journey through. I almost said journey through hell. My journey through the concept of hell.
Okay.
Before, when I was getting into Christianity, long story, we can get into that, but basically, like I said, I used to be a person with views that I'm not proud that I used to hold. I used to like stupid, horrible. No, but I mean, I've watched your channel, Aaron. I wish I used to be a ego pagan spiritualist, whatever, um, because I used to be involved, and I was in like involved in more of a conservative tradition of Christianity, if you will. But more importantly, I used to laugh at the worst things and all my humor. I just I liked being a contrarian. If it was offensive, rude in any way, I liked it. But that was irony. Not that it makes it better, but within that irony, there was a real sense of like, oh, you ever heard of Dr. Taylor Marshall? If you haven't, I don't suggest you look him up because it'll make you mad. But he's an example of what I actually believe, not just irony. And I'm also not proud of that either, because he believes in he made a lot of content against Pope Francis in the past, because saying how bad he was and all of these different things, and because of how he was more left wing, if you will. And I used to really believe in that. And I remember I used to sort of, and I'm ashamed to say this, enjoy the concept of hell in a sense. This idea of being righteous, more righteous, like, yeah, like people deserve hell. But then when you start thinking, like, oh, it's not just going to be serial killers and rapists and murderers down here. It's just going to, so you're telling me, like, what really got me? You ever heard of Jeffrey Dahmer? I think it was him, of course. Didn't he convert before he died? And it's like, I hate to bring this up, but this is something that really got me out of hell. If Jeffrey Dahmer is in heaven and his victims are in hell because maybe there's a chance they weren't Christian, there's just no way. That was the first thing. And then I got into more of like watching your channel and other things just about the concept of hell. Does that make sense? So that's my
Yeah,
journey.
I've seen memes that show Carl Sagan being in hell, and I don't remember who the cult leader was that was on the other side, but it's like Jerry Falwell or something like that. And this guy is supposed to be in heaven. I'm like, okay, well, there's your priorities. I'd rather not. The old joke, right, where the Christian tries to convert the guy so you can be in heaven. Also, well, what kind of people are in heaven? People like me. And what kind of people are going to be in hell? People like you. You need to
Right.
work on your argument.
And I would also mention though, because I want to point out that, because I'm sure it sounds like I'm just going off of my feelings, which is true, but I justify it by morality being written on our hearts. That said, there is also evidence. I see you shaking your head. There is also evidence that hell. I'm not saying it was necessarily a later concept, but after things like Dante's Inferno, it
Yeah.
really kind of grew into a whole thing. I do know there's Jesus crushing the unbelievers in the wine press. You're gonna hate me. I don't believe that that's true.
It's not even one of the gospels. That's in like, what is it, Timothy? I'm thinking it's Timothy. I could be wrong. But it's one of those times where they're pretending to speak for Jesus, but it's some other schmo later on.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So we
that's
don't have hell.
right.
We don't have original sin. Um, if you want to believe in a deistic sort of a God, okay, I guess we're there.
So
Why Christianity? What is Christianity if there's no hell? There's no savior because there's literally nothing to be saved from, and there's no necessity in believing it.
Mhm.
Right? I mean, because you said it's okay if you believe and you don't. I mean, and I brought this up many times in like public speaking engagements where there would be Christians in the audience who criticized me for saying we have friends that are atheists and that's perfectly fine. We don't judge them for that. I'm like, well, have you wondered about your God? Because your God will say, okay, you believed impossible nonsense for no good reason, but you didn't. So you're going to be tortured.
Okay, so to respond to your point there, I'm not in total agreement with you about there not being a savior and there not being sin. Original sin in the story of Adam and Eve, right? I don't take that story literally, but that's not just Saint Augustine also didn't take the story literally, and that was well before studies of the earth. Well, not studies of the earth, but before, like, you know,
That's an
certainly before
interesting
Darwin.
notion because I've read Augustine and I haven't read everything that he wrote, but I mean, everything that I did read implies that that man was just determined to believe whatever he was told to believe.
I see Christianity though as something that naturally evolves, not to make a pun with there. But for example, St. Augustine had some good teachings. He also had some that I would more or less agree with you on. And I think I believe though, if I want to quote my source, it's called the the literal meaning of Genesis. I believe it's by St. Augustine. But if I'm not mistaken, it was him who, if I'm mistaken, correct me, or sure someone in the chat will. But my point is, even some early church fathers, people like St. Augustine, did not take the story of Genesis literally. But to your point on sin, I think if you look around the world, you'll see that humans are broken. This is something that goes, that now we can kind of drag socialism into this without going off the rails of Christianity. Marx teaches, for instance, in his version of socialism, which he called different from the utopians, that, well, humans are sort of products of their, dialectical materialism, that people are sort of products of their environment around them. I would happen to believe that we live in a fallen world in the sense that we are sinful people inherently, and that oftentimes, I'm really biased, but I look at myself in a sense that I was a very sinful person, and it took me sort of crawling, and I'm not out of it at all. But the point is, you have to usually better yourself. There wouldn't be self-help books and things of that nature if we were just like pretty much great, and like let's just get you even greater. Most people, and I think that's evidence of sin right there, is human nature in itself. Now, that being said, where does the savior come in? Because you mentioned, well, what if you die? There's no hell to go to. Why would I believe? Well, if you want to make life better on this earth, and if you want to be the best version of yourself, I would say I would at least recommend considering Jesus and Christianity, if that makes sense to you.
Why?
Because I've seen it work for me, although not at first, but eventually. And I've also seen, I've seen, as I've presented with the Christian ethics and other things of that I would recommend that some people might be able to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, so to speak. However, that accepting Jesus can help. What's the word I'm looking for?
Okay, so I've heard the exact same thing because we sometimes go to the Icon Temple here in Dallas, which happens to have a 5-star restaurant inside.
Oh, nice.
Which is quite the experience. When atheists come to visit me in Dallas, very often they're vegetarians, and very often they want something of the local Dallas ambiance. I take them to the Krishna temple.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. Now they will argue, and they have, that when you accept Krishna into your life, you get this revelation, this elation, this euphoria, everything that Jesus offers, because Krishna is literally Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Just 600 years earlier.
Well,
and the same thing I've heard Muslims do, not all of them certainly, but I've heard some Muslims do this thing about how when you convert to Islam, when you submit to Allah, and likewise, I read an article back in 1981 about this girl in Thailand who said that her whole life was just in shambles, and everything turned around the moment she accepted Buddha into her heart. So it doesn't matter who the magic imaginary friend is. It doesn't matter what the phony baloney belief system is. It literally could be that you get a new job that's more rewarding, or that you get a hobby that you adore. all these sorts of things can change your life. But why would I want to convince myself to be true things that are not evidently true or even logically true nor even possible?
So I wouldn't ask you to do that. Maybe I know you said I asserted that the soul is real, but this is how my faith works, right? Prayer, communication with God, and before you ask, no, I don't literally hear voices in my head. I mean, not like that, at least.
Does
Um,
God need you to pray for him?
does he need me to? No.
Yeah, God is a telepath, isn't he?
Okay, and that goes into the thing of whole free will, right? If he's all powerful, all that, he's created everything, that he knows everything we're gonna do and ever thought, right?
He knows the answer to the question that you haven't asked, and he knows whether you're going to ask it. But he already
Sure.
knows the answer, so why do you have to ask?
For the simple reason that we live in our three-dimensional reality, and we have to operate within that constraints. Do you remember? I've seen in your debates before, because I have been a super fan.
I want to submit to you that the reason that you pray, the reason that you pray to your God, the same reason everybody else prays to various different gods, is because it is imaginary and it becomes real to you when you talk to it. That when you talk to an imaginary thing long enough, it will begin to talk back.
Sure.
Anybody that's seen what is this Tom Hanks, and when he was playing a castaway on an island, and he ends up developing a relationship with a decaying volleyball. That's the perfect example.
Mhm.
Talk to any imaginary thing long enough, and it'll start talking back. That's where our gods come from.
Sure. And can I address that in a second? But can I actually address the whole point first about how you said God knowing all of our thoughts before we say it, after we say it, he knows the question and all that?
Okay.
I remember in your debates before, you have been asked, like, how do you know that you weren't created, like, or you give the example 2 weeks ago with the head in a jar.
Yep.
And, I think that's, you know what I mean? My answer
That was
similar.
Matt Slick.
Matt Slick. Okay.
Yeah.
I actually think I saw his conversation with you. I had to stop because he kept, like, he would say something and he'd be like, I didn't say that. Well, I didn't say that. Well, Aaron, ask me what I said. So I was like, okay, I'd rather watch something else.
Yeah.
But basically, why would I pray to God? Well, because I live in the three-dimensional reality I live in. I'm not in God's reality. Therefore, yeah, so let's say, sure, there's no free will if from our, at least when we get out of our perspective. It doesn't change the fact that I'm doing what I do for the same reason that you trust you weren't born in a jar 2 minutes ago and all the memories are false implanted, because I have to.
But let me put this another way, because one
Sure.
of the arguments that Matt Slick has used and a number of other people have used, whether we know anything absolutely, one of the things we know absolutely was that there was never a global flood of Noah's Ark. Right. So we have all the evidence against the global flood. And then Matt Slick argued, but you can't use evidence because you can't prove that you yourself exist, that you're not just created with false memories in a false reality. Okay. If that were the case, Noah's Ark didn't happen in an alternative reality either, which makes it absolute in either reality, whether evidence is real or it isn't. Noah's flood never happened either way. The Bible is wrong, which is a huge issue. Sure. On a lot of things, scientifically and historically, ethically and morally, the Bible is just straight up wrong on practically everything. So, contingency argument. To be Christian, you have to believe in the Bible in whole or in part, right? And there's very few parts that can be left standing on their own. You have to believe that there's a soul. We know there isn't one. You have to believe that some of these historic events that Jesus believed in, that we know now never happened, the Tower of Babel, the global flood, the Exodus, Adam and Eve, all of these sorts of things that we know never happened. Then you have to ignore what Jesus said and did in the stories as by his account. He was a faith healer. He told all of his followers to give him all of their money, all of it, and not worry about having any left to eat. He promises that he'll take it and he'll feed the poor or something, just like every modern faith healer that has a $20 million Cessna Citation jet today. They're doing the same scam that Jesus did. He didn't have any idea how to cure the diseases he pretended to cure, because he was an exorcist. He thought that that diseases were caused by demons.
Mhm.
So when you have to be Christian, you have to ignore that Jesus was an obvious fraud. You have to ignore that the Bible is wrong about fuck all, right? Yeah, then you have to imagine that we have a soul when we know that we don't.
Mhm.
You have to pretend that there's these sin things that we're supposed to be saved from, which we know don't exist. You don't even have the hell to send us to save us from something. You don't have a reward in heaven, because heaven would eventually be a hell. Any kind of eternity, if it's eternity,
Mhm.
it's going to be damnation at some point. So we're down to everything being contingent on the existence of this God.
Mhm.
So you assume the God, and then you assume a whole bunch of things that we know are not true. And so you
Mhm.
have a mountain of false assumptions on which you've built your faith. Do you see where
So
I'm coming from now?
I do see where you're coming from,
Okay.
and I would like to sort of respond to it. I don't want to use the word debate it, because I like to keep an open mind. I would agree with you that there's a lot of things in the Bible that aren't literal, and also not good.
Not even
And
metaphorically true.
right. So you would agree that Genesis is metaphorically true, right?
Genesis is not metaphorically true. It's a parable. It's just a fable with a moral.
Sorry, I'm using big words I don't understand. That's what I mean. It has a meaning behind it, but like we weren't literally created, but it has like a
Correct.
meaning of
There
choosing
was
the
no
good or
Adam
choosing
and Eve.
evil.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was not. Not even a lot of Christians don't, or at least a lot of Christians that are more on closer to me don't believe in a literal Adam and Eve. And you actually kind of convinced me there's no Moses, and that sent me. And that's a whole nother discussion. But the point is, you talk about Jesus. I want to focus on that if you don't mind.
Sure.
Jesus told everyone to give him all of his wealth, to give them their wealth. To my understanding, he said, "Sell all of your wealth and be poor with him."
Yep.
Right? It wasn't like Jesus was.
The money goes to Jesus,
Yeah. Well,
because that's the poor fund,
Jesus was
and
living
Jesus
alongside
manages.
them, was he not? He wasn't like Kenneth Copeland. Like,
Oh no,
hey,
he
give me
was
your.
very like Kenneth Copeland and Bobby Tilton and all of
Oh
those.
no,
You know, I'm talking about your money. Let's say you want to worship Jesus with $500. Let's say you want to worship Jesus with $1,000.
okay.
All I'm asking is a vow.
Could you? And
Oh,
I'm not trying to challenge you. I guess I am. If you could show me Bible verses or some sort of evidence that Jesus said, "Give me all of your money, and I'll handle it for you."
you really haven't seen it?
I've seen Jesus say, "Sell all of your belongings, go help the poor," and I've seen
Yeah,
him.
and don't worry that you have enough left to eat. You don't. God will provide.
But
Give it all
respectfully,
to
that's
me,
not.
so God will provide. You've never read that?
I have read that. Yes, that
Okay.
like, and I will say that isn't exactly the same thing as saying, "Give me all of your money." But I get from you're saying God owns the world and He's in
Well,
control of
no,
the.
I'm saying Jesus said, "Give me all of your money. Don't worry that you have anything left for food or clothes, because God will provide." Yes, Jesus really did say, "Give me all your money."
I believe that. I don't know how I missed that. I actually have read all of the New Testament. It's been a little while. I will look into that. I mean, I could look it up now if you want me to. I'm not trying to
He says you
filibuster.
cannot serve both God and money.
Right. But at the same time, I would say Jesus was more of a social democrat than an actual socialist in many ways. I know that's
If
probably.
if they'd set up some kind of a fund wherein they could share the wealth, and like that there was something that we could trace where that was benefiting somebody, but no, it's not. It's just like with Bobby Tilton. He would take in the millions of dollars, and he promised that it was all going to go to support a children's orphanage in Haiti, until they discovered that the orphanage in Haiti was entirely imaginary.
Didn't exist. Yeah. What was I gonna say? God. Yes, I get what you're saying, and I certainly agree on Bobby Tilton, and I agree on a lot of what you said. But the thing is, if you could convince me that Jesus was running a Bobby Tilton scam or a Kenneth Copeland scam, that would be like the hell thing. I wouldn't want to worship that God either. Okay.
Okay, let's take any modern religious leader of a
Sure.
high caliber at all, any of them. So T.D.
Mhm.
Jakes, uh, Kenneth Copeland,
Sure.
just any of them. Jerry, go back, Jerry Falwell,
Mhm.
any of them. Find me
Sure.
one that isn't that way.
Can I let me say why I think that is. Remember how we talked, and trust me, I'm steering the ship in the right direction. Remember how we talked about the difference between, like I mentioned, there's Catholic anarchism without the state, and then there is a state. Well, the way I see it, if there is going to be a state, right, we're not going to get into the specifics of anarchism versus libertarian states, but if there is going to be a state that exists, because people can't just freely disassociate from people, right? Like under anarchism, theoretically, you need to have regulations and laws. Churches in the United States are literally able to operate as for-profit businesses and call themselves something else. If it was like that in any other place, then it would be really easy for someone to run a scam. For instance, I know you're in Texas, right? They have a lot of mega churches down there. They don't have to show their books. They don't have to pay any taxes. They don't have to do anything. Meaning that if you don't have a conscience, I mean, if I didn't have a conscience, and I think I do, I mean, talk about an easier way to make money, right? And it's like, so of course all these vipers, den of vipers, are drawn towards it because it's super easy to make money. Now, I will agree that it is the fault of Christians, many Christians, for supporting them, and many Christians for giving them their money. However, I would say that that doesn't mean that that's representative of Christianity or Jesus.
I want you to take my challenge.
The phylogeny challenge? I'm just kidding.
Find any high caliber religious leader, somebody that does a televised sermons or whatever. You know, I mean, what was it? Robert Morris recently. I did an expose on him a couple of years back.
Oh God, I remember yeah.
And they are all that way. Find me one who's not. I challenge you. You're going to go to Creflo Dollar and find out that Creflo Dollar beats his own children. Oh, everybody, God. They are all that way. There's not one who isn't.
Yeah. So that's a reason I've had issues, of course, and issues is a light way to put it. It's been, I think, maybe not over a year. Actually, it's been a little less I don't know, but since I've been to Mass and with the Catholic Church, you know, the Pope is like throughout history, and that's a whole other story. But what I'm saying is I largely agree with you, but would it count if I got like local people that I know and then sent you that if they were cool with it, or does it need to be like someone that has a Wikipedia page?
Well, when we're talking about low-level people, I would concede that there's people who barely struggling who turned their trailer house. You know, they have one trailer in the park that has a cross on the door, and they do their little church thing. Maybe they're not having sex with their own children.
God, I mean,
you know, there's a 50-50 chance that maybe they're not having sex with their own children. So some of them might be decent people. But when you get into the big ones, any of the big ones, anybody that has, if their sermons are on television, they're all going to be overtly dishonest, every one of them.
Two things. Number one, I made the mistake of looking at the chat real quick. I'm not a social democrat because I want all of the means of production socially owned and without a market. But if you disagree, that's fine. To your point, Aaron, that's why we need the regulations. That's why we need to have these things put in place so you can't do that, right? I mean, you've been a part of nonprofits, haven't you? And
I have to address something that just came up. Somebody threw out the name Dr. Ken Miller. And again, I specify we are talking about people who do their televised sermons. And while Ken Miller did do a guest sermon at a Catholic church in Houston, he doesn't run a church. He is a scientist. That's his vocation. We're talking about people who run ministries.
Can I ask you something, Aaron, that I've been dying to ask you?
Sure.
I know you like Dr. Ken Miller. I've watched all of Lies in the Textbooks. That's made me into a super fan. So I know he was mentioned a few times. And I remember back in college, I would go eat lunch and I would watch Lies in the Text. It was live at the time, or you know, not live, but you were just uploading. And I've watched that series several times. Because I know he's kind of someone you like and respect, you have more of a delicate, probably, approach to it. But what do you think about? Because I've seen you interview him. How do you feel about his faith, him having religion despite being a scientist?
I think faith is poisonous. Faith is deceptive. Faith is dishonest to any degree. So when I had an opportunity to meet Ken Miller years ago in person, when I was speaking at the Houston Oasis, and I heard that Miller was just like 3 miles away. He was in a church, and he was speaking at that church, and there was some people that were going to go down there to see him. I'm like, I would love to meet Ken Miller, and they said, yeah, he's giving a sermon at a church. I'm like, no, fuck no.
Because can I guess why?
Why would I want to go meet somebody who the reason that I admire them is because how they stand up for the truth? And if that is the reason that I admire, why do I want to go sit in the audience and listen to him lie?
Okay, can I say something a little bit kooky? If I haven't already. Sorry, that's a bad way to phrase it. But the reason, sorry, the reason I the reason I say that is I get what you're saying, and I know from watching your channel you hate being lied to. That's something that makes you mad. And one thing, can I just say that I actually appreciated with your channel that I assume you get criticism for. I don't follow your critics I'm sure you have them. I remember, so I used to be a creationist.
Yeah.
One or two, right? Well, I used to be a creationist, not kind of just because I didn't want to believe in the mainstream thing. I just wanted to be different, so to speak. I know that's like a really stupid reason, but like I'm not the brightest crown in the drawer, but whatever. Especially not at the time. But I remember that like you would call them liars. And when you call someone a liar, it gets your attention, right? It's like you're not just saying, well, Ray Comfort said XYZ and here's why he's wrong. You're saying here's how he lied about it. And then you would show he lied about it. And that kind of flipped. That was the biggest impact you had on me. I was like, holy crap, like with Darwin's eye. I thought for the longest time Darwin said the eye couldn't evolve. Then you showed that they were lying. And then my favorite thing you've ever said is, what are the odds that they were reading that and they just stopped reading it and they didn't finish the quote by Darwin? They're just like, yeah, no, I'm done. Oh, done. I mean, maybe one of them did, but all of them, come on. But anyways, here's the thing I wanted to say. Francis Collins is another one. Remember how his conversion story of where he saw the three split waterfall? I think that's beautiful. What do you think of that?
Stupid. I mean, that's just the best way to put it. Oh, I see a waterfall. The waterfall split into three ways. Therefore, the Christian Trinity. Which did you even think about what the Christian Trinity is? Because it's not a fucking waterfall.
Sure, but
at best, it's a perversion of the Hindu Trimurti, where at least you started out with three individual characters all in one unified Godhead. But there's no justification for he identifies as an evangelical, and that's the Trinity. That's the analogy he used. Is the waterfall splitting into three ways?
Well, evangelicals I know do believe in the Trinity. They don't do this, but they do believe in it.
I know, but it's like they don't weigh what it is. Mm-hmm. And to put this in perspective, I mean, I've talked to a number of believers when they try to put their concepts down in practical application, they realize that it can't work.
Sure.
So with this one person, they gave me this idealized vision of a house that they wanted to build, and they were in an opportunity where they could actually build a house. Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, well, let's sit down and draw it out. And they couldn't get their reality to fit on a piece of graph paper. They well, how many feet is it from this to this? Nothing. It's all dreamscape, and the shit has to be able to move, and it's got to be in 4 dimensions on a piece of paper. Mm-hmm. And they just got angry at me. I'm like, well, how big is if you put a room that's this big next to a room that's this big, you're only going to have this much space. There's no practicality. And there was like a psychotic meltdown. And I'm just trying to help them because what they described sounded lovely. Let's make that real.
Yeah.
And I can't help them fulfill a dream because it is such a distortion. When you have dreams and mm-hmm. in 1 minute you're driving a car and then the next moment you're not driving a car. In the next moment you have a toy car. You're in traffic with real cars, but you've got a toy car and you're just pushing it down the road. Or it's supposed to be you, it's supposed to be your family, but your wife is somebody you've never met. Your parents are famous celebrities from some movie.
Sure.
Dreams don't make sense. So one, you should stop trying to interpret dreams as if they do, because they don't. but a lot of these faith-based beliefs cannot be translated into practical reality.
Hmm. So I don't largely disagree with you. This is the thing, though. You're trying to put material analysis on the immaterial, and I think if you try to do that, that would be fruitless, would it not? I mean, for
Well, we
example,
have to
imagine.
pretend for
Go
a
ahead.
moment. We have to be extremely courteous and pretend that there is something called the immaterial,
Hmm.
which I don't like that word. Can we just call it imaginary? Means the same thing.
Only because I'm a big fan, we can. I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. Yeah. Okay. Okay. But the thing is, I can't. Let me put it like this: have you ever had things that you just like like? Remember, I brought up the waterfall example. The reason I like that analogy is he saw a waterfall. I'm presuming the story being true, of course. I'm presuming that if the story is true and he saw the waterfall, I would say it was like the Holy Spirit, like revealing, like the Trinity is true within him. Because you actually said, well, surely unless he was walking thinking about the Trinity, maybe he was, I doubt it. And then he comes across the waterfall, and then it's like, oh my God, there's a three split waterfall, right? Like if you see something and then sometimes you just know. And I think that's where we fundamentally disagree, Aaron. There's some things you just know because it's either been revealed to you by the Holy Spirit and
Yeah, that's where we fundamentally disagree. Because once upon a time, I just knew all kinds of things that I now know better,
okay.
that I knew then, but turned out not to be true. Is one of my favorite lines out of Men in Black. You
Sure.
know, imagine what you'll know tomorrow.
But
That's it's important.
wouldn't you agree that so from I've watched you for a long time, but I guess I want to ask to make sure. So you basically see the material world as everything that can be verified to be true, and then everything else is just imaginary fairy tale nonsense.
I think it was Democritus who said that the only thing that exists are atoms
Hmm.
and some other aspect. I would have to look up his quote, but yeah, all of the immaterial, meaning the imaginary, or we could use magical.
Hmm.
If we're going to use the word supernatural, then we were using a combination of imaginary and magical. It's not
Oh,
real at all.
so then, how would you? Let's say that not a debate, but a question. What would you prescribe to me then for all of my religious experiences that I hold dear in my prayers? What would you say, Andre? This is what you should make of it.
Well, I've yet to meet a Christian whose religious experiences were more profound or interesting or tangible than my own.
Okay.
And my own were bullshit.
That,
I
okay.
completely believed them at the time, and it was painful to realize that none of that shit really happened, that I imagined it all. I mean, I had shared experiences with other occult adepts, if you will.
Well, I've never had that.
And I've had shared experiences with these people, and so when I found them through the magic of the internet, you manage to track down people that you went to high school with, find out where they are now, that kind of thing, and you reach out and you can communicate with them again. The two most important people from my paranormal experiences that had shared those experiences, not only I got to talk to both of them, not only did they not, either of them, remember those events the same way I did, they didn't remember them at all.
Hmm.
So where I was completely immersed in this belief system, and there are these other people who are in it with me, I'm now realizing that I don't have any basis. I don't have anything that can prove anything that I used to believe. I've got nothing substantive, nothing. I can't show that there's any truth at all to what I believe. So I'm reaching out to find the people who were there who will corroborate.
Hmm.
And it turns out they're atheists now, both of them, hardcore materialists. They don't believe they ever participated in this.
Did that hurt you, if you don't mind me asking? You just kind of hinted it
I
did.
still remember
Hmm.
these things. I remember how it looked, but now I'm remembering, or I'm realizing how, and this can only happen in retrospect,
Hmm.
how my mind tricked me into thinking this, and how easy it was. This was important. How easy it was to manipulate other people into perceive. I could get people to see, hear, feel whatever it was that they already believed. All I had to do was provide the appropriate ambiance and start the feedback loop that would happen in their own mind.
Interesting. So I see what you mean there, being kind of wanting to believe something or being tricked into it. I would like to add, Mr. Ra, that sorry,
I'm not an important person. Just call me Art.
you had a larger impact on my life than you might imagine. If I hadn't come across your channel, I would at least believe in the flood, probably, and a few other things. But anyways,
Thank you for sharing sincerely.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm not just trying to flatter you. I really liked how you would call out people for lying, because when you realize you're lied to, it's different than just having two equal opinions, right? At least in my perspective.
Yeah.
That all being said, I don't claim, at least not anymore. There was a time where I would have, that I have, and I guess maybe this would end the whole conversation, but I would be lying to you if I said I have evidence of Christianity that I can show you in the material, or maybe even at all by your definitions, if we're not going to consider spiritual experiences. I would argue only that there's evidence that points to a deistic God or creator, and then Christianity would have to come through spiritual experiences, through asking the Holy Spirit. I mean, that's how St. Paul, or if I were to not be a Catholic, Paul, although he'd be in heaven, so a saint, but said, you have, I believe it was him, you ask the Holy Spirit, and then the Holy Spirit will either reveal it and you are not. But it sounds like you're more saying that that's no different than when you had your pagan experiences.
I've studied comparative religions, and
Mm-hmm.
this includes testimonies from believers in other faiths.
Yeah.
All you've got to do is really believe. There doesn't have to be any truth to the god or the pantheon or the spell or whatever. And you will experience things, whatever you want to experience. It can happen, and it doesn't always require drugs. When people practice religion, it actually it charges the same endorphins as would addictive chemicals. So religion can be literally addictive.
That's funny, because it can. You ever had like a spiritual high, sort of, so to speak?
Yeah, yeah. When
If
I
we'll
when I
call it
was
that?
reborn, I was hours of just like floating around the room. You're just kind of like in a daze, like
Is that?
like
I'm
the
so
first
sorry.
time you smoke marijuana, you just float around the room.
I'm not so familiar with I know a little bit about neuroscience and all that, just from like YouTube. So obviously not serious, but just because of spiritual, that is really fascinating. But
Hold on
okay,
1 second. I just have to address something in the chat.
please.
Somebody says Aaron is profane, evil, sacrilegious, worldly, secular, blasphemous, and impious.
That's my
Flattery
alt account.
everywhere.
I'm kidding.
However, my name is Aaron, not Aaron. Thank you. All right, go ahead, please.
And I was joking about that being my alt account, obviously. It's my other personality that's mad at you. I'm kidding. So I guess it's going to come down to, and I hope you weren't hoping for too much of a debate, and the discussion's fine, because
I wasn't hoping for anything. I
Okay.
knew it would be an interesting. I knew that it would be interesting to hear your perspective.
Oh, thank you. I guess it's going to come down to if I am able to am I going to say that these are spiritual experiences of the Holy Spirit that reveal things to me, or am I just making it up, or am I just seeing it wrong? And
Imagine the realization when you ask yourself that question and you start to realize what that answer is. People used to promote the near-death experiences to me quite a lot.
uh-huh.
And then I started looking into near-death experiences that happen different parts of the world. It's not all just going on in the United States or the UK or what have you. When it happens in India, it's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Indians come back with having met their gods. They come back claiming to have proof of reincarnation. So they've confirmed that Hinduism is true and Christianity is false.
So I actually wanted to say something. I'm a little nervous to say because I don't want you to think I'm a quack, but it might be too late for that. Um, do you remember? Because I mean it when I said I've been a big fan, especially lies in the textbooks. You mentioned you had a friend or have a friend who's a medical technician who saw the cat-headed lady Bass topless
Yep.
in the room. Okay, I'm just gonna go out
Yep.
and say this. What if I told you that that might be him being led to Jesus? Hear me out. Hear me out. I loved Egyptian mythology growing up. I read Rick Riordan. I read the Kane Chronicles, which is a book by Rick Riordan, a series actually. And then I later got into actual mythology, and I got really interested in spiritualism and stuff like that. And I probably would have never been interested in Christianity or interested in a creed, interested in anything of that matter if it weren't for my interest in how ancient are Egyptians ancient? I don't know, but ancient people viewed spirituality. I don't know what this guy's journey is going to be, but if that gentleman were to turn out to be a Christian, would that at all make like, oh wow, maybe God's using him, or do
No,
I sound like an idiot?
no, it wouldn't. But I mean, just the very thought of that, because I know this guy,
Yeah.
and I've known him for years. I knew him. I haven't talked to him in like a decade.
Okay.
Even though his last known address was like less than 2 miles from my current house. We have a history,
Hmm.
and he's a scary mofo.
Okay. Okay.
The very idea of him turning Christian is terrifying.
Okay. I
Imagine
wanna.
how much worse he would be.
Okay, if that's the case, then I don't want anything worse for him, and I also want to be a little bit apologize. I don't know this guy's story and all that. I just know that. I don't want to be one of those people who's gonna oh, like I sometimes people like will see you and
I
be like,
go
I
to
know
an
it's
event and he's there and he's angry at me
what's
because
that?
I went to an event and he was
Uh-huh.
there and he was angry at me. I'm like, why? He says, I've been calling you all week, man. I'm like, dude, my phone never rang. I wasn't calling on the phone, man.
Oh, yeah, that's so. If I don't know how much time you have, but could I pick your brain about something else and keep me from ranting?
Okay, yeah, we can go a little over. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I would just quickly ask you. Earlier, you said religion poisons things, right?
Well,
So do
I
you,
believe that's Christopher Hitchens. I said religion reverses everything.
Christopher? Gosh, I wish, man, one day if I ever meet you, there's so many things I'd want to talk to you about. I have a love-hate relationship, or well, not relationship. He's never met him with Christopher Hitchens. I think he had some funny ideas. I think he had some horrible ideas.
I
But
have to respect. I mean, you're never going to agree with anybody about everything.
no, no.
Okay, but I mean, there were things about Christopher Hitchens that were so impressive. If you were ever in the room with him and heard him speak, like, damn, that man commands a room.
He had a mastery of the English language that I would be envious of. His debate with Rabbi Wolpe, David Wolpe. I don't know. He saw.
Yeah, Wolpe wouldn't talk to me. I asked him if I could interview him, and he refused.
Oh, that's
Yeah, it's sad. But when I went to Prestonwood Baptist Church to see Christopher Hitchens debate Bill Dembski,
oh,
and Prestonwood Baptist Church has a 7,500 seat stadium sanctuary. That's
okay.
7,500 seats. When I pulled up
7,500
in
seats.
one of the parking lots, I asked which is the building that has the main forum, and no, somebody said, "Yeah, I think it's the one closest to the runway," because this was like being at an airport. This was huge. This is a church, right?
Wow.
So I get in this place, and I had to wonder because Hitchens is masterful, powerful. What a presence! And I was like, okay, because
Mhm.
there's hands down, no question. Christopher Hitchens is our best. Absolutely. Nobody's going to argue that. Nobody's going to say, well, I would do better than Hitchens. Fuck no. We all know
No.
better. Hitchens the best we got. You guys chose Bill Dembski? Are,
I
are you sure?
I would, you know, It's funny you say that. I actually really don't like, and maybe it's your fault, but I really don't like many religious apologists that I've seen. I don't like Frank Turek. I don't like William Lane Craig. I don't like I don't like a lot of them, and it's not like me trying to be holier than thou. I just think that they just like, to me, my problem is I feel like a lot of them just kind of babble. And what I mean is like you're talking about like they don't like it takes like 3 hours to get to the point of, oh, the Holy Spirit. And it's like, well,
Yep.
the immaterial, and it's like, just like get to the point. But anyways, yeah, I guess last thing I'll ask you about, so you said religion poison. Oh no, Hitchens said that, right? And you said, okay, tell me, what do you mean religion reverses everything? What does that mean?
One of the first argument that religion always does is they try to project their own faults, whatever it is that they're doing, onto their opposition. So they want to pretend as if religion is scientific and science is religious
Okay,
to
so
start.
okay.
Yeah. And then where they make themselves out to be holier than thou when they're really world class evil.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Robert
Mm-hmm.
Morris, for example, at
Yeah.
Kent Hovind, just like all these people, and there's history's full of them.
Mm-hmm.
They tout themselves, like in Kitzmiller versus Dover, the judge it complained that the people who were testifying on behalf of intelligent design, he said, as a Christian, it disturbed him how these people would so proudly tout their religious faith in public and then time and again lie
Mm-hmm.
to cover their tracks and hide the real ID policy. And I'm thinking, if I'm a Christian and I'm going to want to favor these people to some degree, right? But the way that they argue causes me to side with the atheists, because at least the atheists are not knowingly and deliberately lying.
I mean, that's what got me away when you, like I mentioned, your channel from any. I was already kind of losing it, but what got me like kind of like the bow on intelligent design and all of that was like, even if the theory of evolution turns out to be replaced tomorrow, I know it won't. Trust me, I've watched enough of your videos, but but it wouldn't change the fact that like Kent Hovind kept lying about it, right? You know what I mean? It's like it wouldn't change the fact that Ray Comfort was my guy for a while. I know he's not Catholic, but that's, yeah, I
That's
know.
gotta hurt.
I mean, when you go back and you watch some of the stuff, you're like, man, like, wow. But he seems a little more he's not, I think he does lie. Like you said, like with the Darwin quote, he does that too. And to me, there's a difference between an opinion and misquoting someone deliberately. But I do think Ray Comfort is a little more endearing in the sense he doesn't charge so much money. Like he has, like you can learn his bullshit for free if you
Excuse
want.
me. Ray Comfort spoke at Prestonwood Baptist Church, the 100 seat stadium. He
Uh-huh.
spoke there. He gave a 30-minute oration.
Uh-huh.
They paid him $1,000 a minute
I take back
for
everything
that
I said.
half-hour speech.
I take back everything I said. It was just because, okay, I didn't know that.
He
I've never
makes
actually.
$4 million a year. He turned the lower half of his Monterey Beach. Is it Monterey? I forget what beach. I forget what beach he lives on. But he's got this 2-story house, and they've turned the bottom of it into a processing and distribution center for these bullshit DVDs.
Mm,
He makes $4 million a year, telling the same lie over and over again, telling the same lie. And ironically, that lie is, have you ever told a lie?
then you're a liar. Um, I, I actually, I actually watched a documentary he put. I mean, if you want to call it a documentary, I watched a documentary he put out called Banana Man, in which I watched it before I ever saw the atheist criticism to it, and I thought, wow, these atheists totally slandered him, and I was like, he didn't mean it like that. But then the whole concept of a banana being perfect, and then people would comment like, well, what about a pineapple? That's not perfectly, meant to open like a banana. So, but again, I digress there. Um, but yeah, that's sort of my story. I don't want to. I want you to make sure you keep a time check on this. I don't know if you have any more questions for me or if I did a
I
good job.
I don't. I enjoyed the conversation.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm going to read a couple of super chats because we've got them.
Sure.
Super sticker from Primordial Puggles. What a great name. offers $5 Australian and says Shiba dog in a combat position. Well, I guess that's a description for an image that I can't see.
I
Okay.
can't either.
Yeah, and then Primordial Puggles again sent one Aron-Ra gift membership, and then Lilith Liberated. Hi, Lilith. Says Andre, I think the version of Christianity you believe in is virtuous because you are virtuous or wish to be. Don't let God steal credit for your virtue. Well
That's
put.
very kind of you. That's very kind of you. I would say want to be virtuous because I have a lot of. I'm not out of it yet, but that's a very kind comment of you to make. I will consider this conversation and that comment. Thank you.
I would also remind you, Andre, that every year of my life, I look back on the previous year, embarrassed about what I didn't know or things
Sure.
that I said or believed or did that I shouldn't have. And so
Uh-huh.
I try to improve a little bit all the time.
Hey, trust me. I that makes me feel comforted because I used to hold beliefs that I told you I like laughing and humor at things that were horrible and making terrible jokes, and then unironically also believing in things without the irony, like Dr. Taylor Marshall and all these the words tradcath, and that is not something I hold to anymore. However, yeah. Thanks for having me, Aaron. I would just close with saying, can I just say one last thing? I don't know if this will be brought up. I haven't read most of the comments. I only made the mistake of checking it like once or twice. Someone said that to the social democracy thing. Although I don't consider myself a social democrat because I don't want ideally markets and I want all the means of production socialized, whether it's with the state or whether anarchist. I do want to mention that I I do support social democrat candidates, like for example Sanders, who's a little more of a social democrat, and I would rather live in a social democracy than in like the Soviet Union or China or that. I just want to be clear about that. So even though Sanders doesn't agree with me on a lot, it's like I would pick, if that makes sense. I just wanted to throw that out there.
I wish that Americans knew that my friend in Denmark, who is a dishwasher in a restaurant, is able to support his own apartment, his own wheels and all of that on one income, and he can live independently, and he has free health care, and he has like 6 weeks of paid vacation a year.
Huh.
I mean, he lives pretty damn good on a dishwasher salary that Americans can't beat.
Yeah, I hope Americans do wake up to that, but there's a lot of propaganda out there about it. Because you talk about me, right, wanting to socialize all of the means of production, right? I mean, on the one hand, I do want that, but on the other hand, it's like, are we ever gonna get like universal health care? Like maybe like maybe I need to chill. I mean, you know what I mean? Because it's like
Yeah.
because then people say
The
that's
problem,
communism, and it's like that's communism. That's a stateless, classless, moneyless society. You free. I don't
yeah,
know.
you're never going to get the problem is that all of our politicians are owned by the pharmaceutical industry and the insurance industry.
Yeah, all the lobbies, all the powerful
Yep.
lobbies.
I got
So
one more comment here for Tyrant Barry offers €5 and says, "Sorry, I'm late for the party. Thanks for your integrity, Aaron." Thank you very much for that. And Andre, give a last word and we'll close out.
thank you for having me, Aaron. Thank you to everyone for watching and listening to my view on things. I did put in my title just because my friends were like, "You're really going to put yourself on YouTube and not be promoting anything?" I guess you could find me on Substack at Reformed Christian Socialist. There's no posts on there. I created it last night because I was told, like, if you're going to be going on YouTube and putting yourself out there, you have to promote something. So that's what I'm promoting. But more importantly, thank
Email
you,
me the
Aaron.
link to that, and I'll go ahead and put it back in the description.
Email that to you?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll send that to the reply email. Thank you so much, Aaron. Thank you to everyone in the chat, and thank you so much. That's all.
Okay. Good night.
Good night.